Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about programmers not being needed. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, how long would you say that it is until computer programmers will no longer be needed? I would say that that should probably happen at about the same time AI reaches near sentience, something like that. When general I think that's the term, would become a fact of everyday life, basically. And it's also the main reason why I don't really. Well, I've never really gotten worried about the AI scared that everybody's talking about, and AI is taking over and things like that. One part is because, of course, that at least I have basic knowledge of how to train, how AIs are trained, and I can build simple models and things like that, which helps a little bit. I suspect that is a little bit the same as when when the millennium was happening and people were afraid that all computers were going to crash due to it switching over to 00 in on the clocks wouldn't they would get messed up and so forth, and all the damn people working on software like in Linux and so forth who kind of went, yeah, the clock will say 00, but the time itself is actually being represented by, I think is it a int or is it a long? Yeah, something like that. Anywho, like you do understand how like that 00 isn't going to mess up the computer because you understand at least a little bit about how the computer is actually holding the number for time, like the Unix timestamp, for example. And so the same thing goes for here, where I know what it means to be a software developer, and I know what an AI is capable of doing right now. And I know that, for example, when I read in the newspapers and things like that, that AI has won a competition or things like that, and so forth and so forth. I know that the people who are writing about these things mostly are like they're journalists, they're not technology experts or anything like that. They're basically just projecting what they believe has happened. And then when I read the articles, sure enough, it's usually the case that you have some professor somewhere or some group who has used an AI to do something and so forth and so forth. And I kind of go, it's pretty much how we and that has been going on for more than a while, how some researchers have created computers who can win chess games. And I mean, that's a trick that has been done for so many years that I can't even tell you. You can go on Wikipedia that when the first computer was developed to win chess matches and so forth. You have a similar sort of beast here, where the humans are providing a lot of assistance to the computer in order for the computer to be able to execute a task. Now, AI is a much more sophisticated beast than, say, generating chess games, but it's still fundamentally the same thing that is happening. The computer cannot by itself fix anything. It needs a human to help it. It's the same thing we do as software developers, in case you haven't reflected on that all that much. My job as a software developer, yeah, it is absolutely part of it to write code, like to actually type out the characters and stuff like that, because the computer can't do that for me. That's the thing that the AIs right now are getting better at, to be able to sort of take a requirement or an explanation or something like that for what I want the code to do, and then have the AI create that code for me. That is where we are right now. But there is one piece in there that people keep on just for some reason ignoring, and that is that the AI needs someone to explain to it what the code is supposed to do. And the AI is not going to be able to figure that out without help. And so what I try to tell people is that computer programmers will no longer be needed. Like, the coding we do might change. It might be the case that these days I sit here like an animal and just type things on a computer. It types things into the computer, and maybe in a few years I will have a microphone where all I have to do is to sit and look at my editor or whatever I'm writing in and say, hey, I need a loop, or I need a B, and C, I need this specification, and my explanations will become more and more intuitive to to the computer itself. But the distance between that and having your, let's just take your average manager, someone who's never ever done computer programming, they don't know anything about software, they don't know nothing at all. I hope you can imagine that the gap between those two is pretty large, because you would have to get, as I said, near sentience to get to a point where you, if you think about yourself as a human, what you do in its essence is to act as a bridge between the code that needs to go into the computer and the human who doesn't know anything about the computer or how it works or how software is supposed to be built or so forth and so forth, and take their specification, human speech, natural language, you convert that into a specification. And then you have to have a feedback cycle where if you make something that, like we call bugs, for example, where things aren't working as intended with the system or things like that, you have to go and figure out what's wrong and try to rectify the code so that it does the thing that the person is expecting it to do. That process, and I have a coworker who did that. He's an engineering manager, and he explained to me that he tried to use his very limited knowledge of coding to get the AI to build a very simple program, and he said, yeah, that took a long time. And I go, yeah, it's going to take a long time. That's why I trained for years in order to be able to do it fairly quickly. But for him as a layman, it's not going to be an easy journey, even if the AI can write the code, because he doesn't know what to tell the computer. He doesn't know how to help the AI to actually do these things. And that's why I argue that's when we get. So if you take something similar to, for example, the Iron Man movies, Jarvis, the AI in that movie series, that's the level you would need practically for like an average programmer not to be needed anymore. That's what I argue at the very least. So what I want you to take away from this is that computer programmers will probably no longer be needed when AI gets to a point where it's pretty much a cookie cutter process where you can, in a sense, imagine if you took WordPress or something like that and put it on steroids, where you can just tell a program of some sort, I want a website, I want that to look like that, I want that to look like that, and depending on how far you push this, of course, I want it to run on whatever cloud provider, like I want a certain infrastructure, I want it to do this and so forth, like, because that's the real problem, the communication between, like, that bridge between getting a specification from the mind of whoever is the business person or who wants the system and getting it to be built. In a sense, I would say that it's easy. I mean, it's what a construction worker does as well. I am not able to build a house myself, or like a carpenter or whatever. I can't build a thing, so I can just describe what I want, and then they, with their expertise, will make it for me. And the AI needs to get to a point where they can understand a layman to the point and really get to know them well enough so that they know how the code is supposed to behave. And then if it doesn't behave correctly, to take whatever vague explanations that other person, like, it's basically communication problems. How do you communicate what you want if you don't even know how the thing is working, right? It's, for some areas of industries and stuff like that, it's easier. I would say that, say, art, for example, is a more closer thing, because the thing that about art is that it's more a visual thing, where most laymen or like regular people could explain that they want a painting to look a little bit different or colors to be a little bit different or things like that. And even there, it's not 100% like a simple thing to do, right? Because fundamentally, if you don't know how to describe a thing, you put the responsibility of figuring out what you want on the person who's listening. And that's what we do with our, miscommunication between us humans as well. And the computer has to be at that level. And that level of communication skill it's pretty far off, I would say. I can't even, I would even go as far as to say I question whether or not we will ever get to that point. We might be able to, with given enough time, but I don't think it's coming anytime soon. So I think that the people who are a little bit alarmist and like so forth these days are a little bit like the people in the 70s and the 80s or 60s, whatever it was, where, by today, who made Back to the Future, which is now 10 years ago. And we're still not in tinfoil hats and like riding on hoverboards and stuff like that. It's the same deal, right? You're projecting a future based on what you believe today. But whether or not that's going to happen, I think that's very much up for discussion. Have a great day.